Welcome back to Glow and Flow Radio, the space where healing doesn't require perfection, punishment, or pressure. This is where we slow down, get curious, and learn how to care for ourselves with compassion. Today's episode is one I want you to listen to carefully, not with the goal of fixing yourself, not with a mental checklist, and definitely not with judgment. This episode is called The Emotional Eating Cycle: Understanding Your Triggers with Compassion. Because emotional eating isn't a failure of willpower, it's not a moral flaw, and it's not something that means you're broken. I want you to get that out of your head and replace it with this: it's a biological, emotional, and often trauma informed response to unmet needs. So, if you've ever eaten when you weren't physically hungry, if food has ever felt like comfort, relief, distraction, or even safety, you're not alone and you're not doing anything wrong. Today, let's talk about what's actually happening with kindness. Let's start by redefining emotional eating because the way it's usually talked about causes more harm than help. Emotional eating is not about a lack of discipline. No matter what you've been told before, it's much more than discipline or willpower. It's about your nervous system seeking regulation. When emotions feel overwhelming, for instance, stress, sadness, loneliness, or boredom, your brain looks for relief. And food is fast, familiar, and effective. Especially foods that are warm, sweet, crunchy, or maybe nostalgic. I can remember going to the bakery often with my mom as a child and how I paired that event with good feelings, not knowing at the time that my mom was coping with her abusive marriage through food, primarily sweet, simple carbs, hence us going to the bakery so often. Even you may have wondered, why is it that I eat my emotions or eat to feel better? Of course, it could be in part due to learned experience, but in the such as in the example that I provided. However, it goes much, much deeper than that, and we can't just stop at learned experience. The answer is in the science of our bodies. From a neuroscience perspective, eating can temporarily lower stress hormones, increase dopamine and serotonin, signal safety to our nervous system, even. So when someone says, why do I keep eating when I'm stressed? The answer isn't because you're weak or you lack willpower. The answer is your body is trying to cope with something. It's not something to be ashamed of. We need to remove the shame from from us for how we feel the conversation. There should not be shame involved because it is biological, it is neurological, it is our body trying to respond to something. It's trying to tell us something and help us deal with something. That's something to understand, not to shame. Let's begin by walking through the cycle slowly and honestly. So, the emotional eating cycle begins with an emotional trigger. So, step one of the cycle, the emotional trigger appears. This could be stress from work, an argument, a breakup, financial worries, divorce, exhaustion, loneliness, boredom. I mean, the list can go on and on for those emotional triggers. Step two of this cycle, your nervous system becomes activated. Your body shifts into survival mode based on that emotional trigger. So it goes into fight, flight, freeze, or soothe. And that's where step 3 comes in. Food becomes the coping tool. Your body's trying to soothe your emotion through food. And for you and many others who are emotional eaters, we've learned that food can be soothing when we're going through various emotions, various trials, tribulations, when we're trying to cope with past trauma. And you're eating not because you're hungry, but because your body wants relief. It wants relief for you. Step 4, temporary comfort arrives. You're going through a breakup, you eat that pint of ice cream, and for a slight moment, you feel a little bit better. You're stressed out. You may go for that greasy burger or crunchy chips, sweet candy bar, and you feel better temporarily. For a moment, there's calm, maybe even pleasure, but again, just for a moment. And then step 5, inevitably, shame or guilt follows. You feel guilty for downing that pint of ice cream, for instance. Especially if you already have a weight problem such as obesity. This is the most damaging part of the cycle, step 5, because the shame increases stress, which restarts the cycle. Here's the key insight that I want you to hear clearly. The eating is not the problem. The cycle is fueled by shame. When we remove shame, we weaken the cycle. We allow ourselves to accept our biology, to be human, and we learn how to navigate better. So, in learning how to navigate better, we need to look at common triggers. So let's talk about it. Some of the most common emotional eating triggers are stress, boredom, loneliness, fatigue, and emotional suppression. There are others, but these are some of the most common. And we're not talking about these triggers to label yourself, but to notice patterns. So stress, chronic stress keeps cortisol high, which increases cravings, especially for quick energy foods. Boredom. Boredom is not laziness. It's often a lack of stimulation or fulfillment. Food becomes something to fill that space. Loneliness. Food can mimic connection. Meals are social, comforting, and familiar, especially if connection has felt unsafe or inconsistent. I mean, think about it. Many times when we connect with friends or family to celebrate or spend time with one another, food is often involved. Even in the dating realm, one of the first dates for many people is to go out to eat, have dinner, have lunch together. And in time, we learn to associate connection with eating food. Fatigue. When you're exhausted, your brain wants the fastest form of relief available. So you're looking for that pick me up, and you're looking for it in the form of something sweet, maybe. And it may give you an instant boost, but it's temporary. And emotional suppression, last but not least in this discussion. When feelings aren't allowed space, food steps in to numb, distract, or soothe. I'm sure that you have seen an obesity focused television show, for instance, My 600-Pound Life, where the person uses food to cope with a traumatic event that happened in their life. They continue to overeat, even at their own detriment, and the potential of them losing their life, leaving loved ones behind. Those individuals are extreme examples of those living in the emotional eating cycle and they have not found ways to deal with their trauma other than using food to again soothe, numb, or distract. At least they haven't found a method that equates to the dopamine hit that they receive from eating their favorite comfort foods. This is an extreme example again, but this also highlights why it's important to understand the emotional eating cycle and why that understanding is so important. You can't remedy what you don't understand. When triggers arise, and they will, because that's life, it is imperative to understand why you feel the need to eat and what your body is trying to do for you. And none of these triggers mean you're failing. They mean your system is communicating. Here's where we need to gently shift the conversation. Instead of you asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What is my body asking for right now? What is my body trying to tell me?" Trauma-informed healing recognizes that coping strategies once protected you. So you using food as a coping mechanism, that was a form of protection for you. And you need to recognize and understand that to begin that healing process. Your body learned what worked in moments of overwhelm. Survival patterns don't disappear through force or shame. Some well-meaning fitness gurus or family members may even try to use shame as a means of helping you in their mind. Shame is not effective and often perpetuates the cycle. If shaming people and telling them to eat less and move more worked, we would not have an obesity epidemic happening in our nation, one that's been happening and increasing for decades. While I do acknowledge that eating less and moving more is important, and it can be effective if weight loss is your goal, if you're an emotional eater, which many people who are struggling with obesity are, it does not tackle the root cause of the problem. So we don't just rip food away. We add safety. Healing happens when your nervous system feels safe enough to choose differently when it's ready. No diet is going to be effective if you are an emotional eater who is eating to deal with past trauma, for instance. And until you deal with that, until you're ready to deal with that, the underlying issue, shame, diets, working out until you pass out, which I never recommend, it's not going to be effective. So again, you have to understand the cycle, understand your triggers, and learn how to effectively navigate those triggers outside of using food. So let's talk about some gentle alternatives now. This is not a replacement list. This is not a do this instead demand. But these are gentle options you can explore if and when you feel ready. Pausing for 3 slow breaths before eating. Not to stop yourself, but to check in. And when you check in, you're asking yourself, what emotion is here? What am I feeling? This recognition could aid in shifting behavior over time. If you stop and pause and take a moment to evaluate why you're wanting to eat at that moment, then you may be able to, if it's not true hunger, you may be able to move towards other comfort options, such as warmth, music, your favorite blanket, cuddling up in your favorite blanket, softer lighting, breath work, meditation, going for a walk in nature. You could even try grounding through touch, such as feet on the floor, hand on your chest. That is an exercise that you should, check out. You could Google it. But again, these are options, other comfort options. Food may be one tool, but it's not the only tool. So again, these are gentle alternatives. You don't have to quit emotional eating overnight to begin the healing process. If you make these switches, over time, in your time, you will see the benefit. You heal by expanding your capacity to feel and acknowledge your emotions safely. Healing is not linear and will not look the same for everyone. It's important to keep that in mind. Some people may say, well, I've gone through trauma and I don't overeat. I don't use food to cope. But that is their story. And it may not be yours, and that's okay. Again, you must understand the emotional eating cycle, learn your triggers, and find alternatives that work best for you. Not your spouse, not your neighbor, nor your friend, your coworker, your mom or dad, but for you. If this episode stirred something in you, tenderness, grief, recognition, please be gentle with yourself today. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are learning your own language. The goal isn't control. The goal is understanding. And understanding changes everything. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to save it for later. Re-listen to it when you need to. Share it with someone who needs compassion, not advice. Or simply sit with what came up. No action required. Healing doesn't rush, and neither do you. Until next time, this is Glow and Flow Radio reminding you that your body has always been trying to take care of you, and understanding your body's cues permits you to take care of it.